right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You know how much we love to really get into the weeds on stuff that you actually care about.
Absolutely.
And today we're talking about something that might seem kind of basic at first glance, but it turns out it's actually quite fascinating.
hmm
And that is legally changing your name in the USA.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that has more layers to it than you might expect at first.
Totally. And to guide us on this journey, we have an awesome guide by the Legal Strategist. These folks really break down everything you need to know to navigate this process successfully.
They really do a great job of making it accessible and understandable.
Right, because, you think, oh, changing your name, how hard can that be? I'll just, pick a new name,
Yeah.
fill out some forms, and bam, done.
Right. It seems pretty straightforward.
But then you start digging in and you realize, oh, wow, there are filing fees. There's this whole thing about certified copies of court documents.
Mm.
And the guide even mentioned something about having to publish your name change in a newspaper.
Yeah. That one always throws people for a loop. Seriously. Who even reads newspapers these days? So we're going to break it all down for you today, starting with the legal basics. What do people need to know about the actual laws governing name changes?
Well, the first thing to understand is that name change laws are determined at the state level. So the process can be quite different depending on where you live.
Oh, wow. So it's not like a federal thing. It's really up to each individual state.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to start your research by looking up the specific laws in your state.
Makes sense. So we're not going to be able to give like a one-size-fits-all answer here.
Right. It's going to vary.
But we can definitely give people the tools to figure out what applies to them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's imagine someone listening right now has decided, okay, I'm ready to change my name. Where's the first place they should go to start figuring out what they need to do?
I would say the best place to start is your state's judicial website. They usually have all the information you need on name change procedures, including the required forms and instructions on how to file them. Okay, so judicial website, got it. And I'm guessing this is where we start getting into the paperwork side of things.
Yes. Once you've figured out the specific requirements for your state, you'll need to fill out a petition for name change. This is basically the official document where you request to legally change your name.
Okay, so this petition is kind of like the heart of the whole application.
Exactly. And there are a few key things that need to be included in this petition. Besides your basic information like your current name and your desired name, you'll also need to state the reason for wanting to change your name.
And this is where it gets kind of interesting, right? Because you can't just change your name for any reason. There are some limitations.
Right. The guide specifically mentioned this no fraud clause, which essentially means you can't change your name to deceive people or evade legal obligations.
Yes, so like
Yeah.
you can't just suddenly decide to call yourself John Smith if you have a bunch of unpaid parking tickets under your real name.
Exactly. Or if you're trying to escape debt or hide from the law, you need to have a legitimate reason for wanting to change your name.
Okay, so legitimate reasons, like what are some common examples?
Well, marriage is a very common one. People often change their last names after getting married.
Right, or divorced.
Exactly. Divorce is another big one.
Yeah.
And then there are also people who change their names for gender affirmation purposes or simply because they don't like their current name and want something that reflects their identity better.
So pretty much any reason. That's not about trying to pull a fast one.
Pretty much.
Got it. So you filled out your petition, you've stated your totally legit reason for wanting to change your name. And then I guess this is where those pesky filing fees come in.
Yeah, unfortunately, there are usually fees associated with filing a name change petition. And as you mentioned earlier, they can range quite a bit depending on the state you're in.
The guide said anywhere from $100 to $500.
Yeah, which can be a significant amount for some people.
Definitely. But there was also something in the guide about fee waivers.
Yes, that's important to remember. If you're facing financial hardship or you're in a situation like fleeing domestic violence, you might be eligible for a fee waiver.
Oh, that's really good to know. So it's not a complete barrier for people who might not be able to afford those fees.
Right. There are options available.
Okay, so let's say you've done all that research.
Yeah.
You've filled out the petition, paid the fee, or gotten it waived. What happens next?
Well, in some states, and this is where it gets kind of old school, you actually have to publish a notice of your name change in a local newspaper.
Wait, seriously? They still do that?
Yep. It might seem strange in the age of the internet, but a lot of states still require it. It's usually for a period of about 4 weeks.
So basically you're putting it out there publicly for anyone who might have an objection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about transparency and making sure that no one is being harmed or misled by your name change.
What happens if you just skip that step? Like, what if you're like, you know what, I don't really feel like putting my personal business in the newspaper for everyone to see?
Well, you could actually risk having your whole case dismissed. The courts take this publication requirement pretty seriously.
Wow. Okay. So don't skip the newspaper step.
Definitely not.
All right, so you've jumped through all those hoops, you've done your research, you've filed your petition, you've paid your fees, you've even put it in the newspaper. What's next? Is this where the big dramatic court hearing happens?
Well, there is a court hearing, but it's usually not as dramatic as you might think.
Okay, so it's not like what we see on TV with everyone banging gavels and shouting objections.
Not quite. It's usually a pretty straightforward process. The judge will review your petition, ask you a few questions to confirm your identity and your reasons for changing your name. And as long as everything is in order, they'll usually approve the change.
So they're not really trying to grill you or anything.
Not usually, unless there's some reason to suspect fraud or something like that.
Right. So the guide had some good advice for the hearing itself, like dress professionally, be honest and respectful in your answers, and don't stress out too much.
Exactly. Just be yourself and be prepared to answer any questions the judge might have.
And then, assuming everything goes smoothly, the judge signs off on it,
Yeah.
and you're officially, new name.
You got it. That signed court order is your proof that your name has been legally changed.
Woo! Congratulations. But that's not quite the end of the story, is it?
Not quite.
Yeah.
Now comes the fun part, updating all your IDs and records.
Right. Because it's not like your name magically changes everywhere just because a judge said so.
Exactly. You have to go through the process of updating everything.
And this is where it can get a little overwhelming, right? Because your name is on so many things.
Yeah, it's a bit of a domino effect.
Right.
You have to start with Social Security because they're kind of the gatekeeper for everything else.
Right. So once you get your Social Security card updated, then you can move on to things like your driver's license, your passport, bank accounts, credit cards, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And it's really important to do this as soon as possible because having mismatched names on your documents can cause a lot of headaches down the line.
Totally. Imagine trying to travel with a passport that doesn't match your other ID, or trying to get a loan with a credit report that still have your old name on it.
It can be a real nightmare.
So any tips for staying organized during this ID updating frenzy?
Definitely. The guide had a great tip about getting multiple certified copies of your court order.
Because, one copy isn't enough.
No. A lot of institutions, especially government agencies, are really picky about this. They want to see the original with the official seal and signature.
So it's not just a matter of making photocopies.
Oh, it has to be a certified copy.
How many did they recommend?
They said at least 5.
5. Wow, that seems like a lot.
It might seem excessive, but trust me, it's better to have too many than not enough.
Makes sense. So you're not running around trying to get more copies every time you need to update something.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got Social Security, driver's license, passport. What other important places do people need to remember to update their names?
Well, don't forget about your employer for payroll purposes.
Right. Your paycheck needs to have the right name on it.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And any schools you're attending for diplomas and transcripts.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
And, of course, any creditors you have for loans, credit cards, anything like that.
Even those online subscriptions we all have.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many places our names pop up these days.
Seriously, it's like everywhere.
It really is. And even with the best intentions, it's easy to miss something or make a mistake along the way.
Right. And that's where the guide's checklist comes in handy.
Absolutely. That checklist is a lifesaver. It helps you keep track of every step from start to finish and make sure you don't miss anything crucial.
Plus, it probably helps you avoid those costly delays that can happen if you mess something up.
Exactly.
So there you have it, folks. Changing your name might seem like a simple thing, but as you can see, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
It's definitely a process that requires careful planning and attention to detail.
But with the right guidance, like the awesome guide from the Legal Strategist, you can navigate this process successfully and emerge on the other side with a new name and a fresh start.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a powerful right that we have, and it's important to exercise it correctly.
Totally. And as we wrap up here, I'm curious from your perspective, what are some things beyond the legal steps that people might want to consider when changing their name? What are some of the personal reflections or preparations that might be helpful?
That's a great question. I think it's really important to take some time to think about the meaning and significance of your new name. How does it reflect who you are now or who you want to become?
It's not just a bureaucratic change. It's a personal transformation.
Exactly. And it can be a really exciting and empowering experience.
Totally. Well, folks, we're excited for you as you embark on this journey of reinventing yourself legally and personally. Remember to check out the guide from the Legal Strategist for all the details. And best of luck with your new name.
Good luck.
We'll see you next time for another Deep Dive.